Yeah.
For
Yes,
giving
sir.
me an opportunity to be part of this symposium and meeting. I'm going to talk today on the clinical excellence in cardiometabolic care in type 2 diabetes with a harmonious blend of SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors as a fixed dose combination. And the theme of the talk is make the link, kidneys, diabetes, and heart. Next, please. So remember, type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease. In the pre-diabetics and early type 2 diabetics, there is hyperglycemia with weight gain, EGFR and albuminuria starts getting altered, and the BP, lipids, and CV risk also start showing their ugly head. This put together with genes, environment, lifestyle, diet, exercise, insulin resistance, and decreasing islet beta cell function, other endocrine, neural, and metabolic disturbances like visceral obesity, ROS, inflammation, microbiodata, and gluco and lipotoxicity. So it is the microbiome along with all this, which then goes on to have advanced type 2 diabetes, where you have the metabolic problems of hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, obesity, dyslipidemia, NAFLD, and NASH. You have the cardiac problems of hypertension, hypercoagulation, atherosclerosis, heart failure, and of course ACS, and the renal problems, which begin with reduction gradually in EGFR, with increasing albuminuria, electrolyte imbalance, low hemoglobin, and anemia. Next slide, please. So diabetes and its relationship with the heart and the kidney, if one was to see, everything is interconnected. Diabetes at the center stage causing oxidative stress, inflammation, and cellular apoptosis going on the right to hit the nephrons, losing their function, causing renal failure, and on the left, the cardiomyocyte loss causing heart failure. Next slide, please. So if you look at the profile of the clinically diagnosed new type 2 diabetic, especially in the Asian Indian, a recent study as recent as August 2020, it is unfortunate that in the clinically diagnosed, the HbA1c is as high as 9.1 plus or minus 2.3. And in the diagnosed during screening, it is also more than 8.3 plus or minus 2.4. So by the time the patient comes to light clinically or during screening, his profile is significantly altered, as you see in both the groups. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, if you go on with this, you will see that from the diagnosis of diabetes, you wait after lifestyle for 3 months, you add an agent, wait for 3 months, you add another agent waiting for target, so that you have multiple OADs and multiple insulin injections by the time goal is reached, and so many months and years have gone by. Next slide, please. So the clinical inertia is the most important thing, which is defined as a lack of treatment intensification in a patient not at evidence-based goals for care. That is failure of healthcare providers to initiate or intensify therapy when indicated. Next slide, please. Now, we know that with every 1% reduction in A1C, MI, fatal or non-fatal, goes down by 14%, heart failure by 16%, deaths from diabetes by 21%, microvascular complications 37%, and amputation or death from PVD by 43%. Next slide, please. So the diabetes physiology, the pathophysiology, has moved from the triad to the ominous octet. The triad of hepatic glucose production, decreased insulin secretion, and decreased peripheral glucose utilization has now become hyperglycemia emanating from everything: increased lipolysis, increased glucose reabsorption, decreased glucose uptake, neurotransmitter dysfunction, of course, increased hepatic glucose production, islet dysfunction, decreased insulin sensitivity because of addition, and a decreased incretin effect, all this giving rise to hyperglycemia. This is the famous DiFronzo slide. Next slide, please. So SGLT2s and DPP4s have separate but complementary glucose lowering mechanisms, and they affect 8 out of 8 pathophysiological aspects of the ominous octet when added to metformin. As you can see in the circle, they affect the GI tract, the adipose tissue, the kidney, the muscle, the neurotransmitters from the brain, the liver, the alpha cell, and the insulin secretion from the beta cell, all of them attacking the increased glucose to bring it down. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So how does this impact beta cell function? The models for insulin resistance and beta cell function in human objects. Next slide, please. The importance of this that we have to see, next slide, please, is that the higher your HOMA-IR and the lower your HOMA percentage beta, the more insulin resistant you are and the more stressed are your beta cells. So you need to keep your HOMA-IR numbers down and keep your HOMA percentage beta numbers up. And you can see in the homeostasis model assessment the predictions for the basal or fasting state in humans. Next slide, please. How does this impact everything? Empagliflozin decreases insulin resistance versus placebo. You can see the HOMA-IR change, which has gone down with empagliflozin at 1 year by 42%. And linagliptin increases the beta cell function, which means percentage beta at even 24 weeks by as much as 22.2%. So the linagliptin as well as the EMPA, one pulls down the insulin resistance, the other increases the beta cell function. Next slide, please. Now, when these two work complementary, what happens? Weight and BP reduction is better. Powerful and early efficacy of hyperglycemia control. There's definitely a low risk of hypoglycemia, and CV and renal benefits and safety, the evidence of individual components all add up. Next slide, please. You can see how, keep changing the slides, please. One, metformin and SU have a small role. Then metformin and DPP4, there is an intersection. And when you see metformin with SGLT2 and DPP4, you see that everything is annexed in the last group. Now, if you look at EMPA-LINA fixed dose clinical evidence, the combination evidence, there is early and robust up to 1.8% A1C reduction from the mean baseline of more than 8.5 on a metformin background. There is definitely robust CV, heart failure, and renal evidence with both EMPA and LINA, with minimal risk of hypoglycemia, and interestingly, a lower risk of genital urinary tract infections. So A1C, if you can see in the first graph with the combination, you can see the drug-naive patients, the one on metformin, and you can see higher preventive heart failure, CV, and renal evidence with the combination. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the reduction in weight, blood pressure, serum uric acid levels over 52 weeks, there is body weight reduction with the combination. There is BP reduction, again, better with the higher combination of 25 and 5. And even the uric acid, there is a better reduction, though it was seen that the 10 and 5 is marginally better than the higher dose. So from baseline, all these three were affected for the better of the patient over 52 weeks. Next slide, please. So if you see the high efficacy, everybody would ask, is there an additional hypoglycemia risk? And if you look at the comparable confirmed hypoglycemic adverse events, you can see the 25-5 combination, the 10-5, the individual combinations of EMPA 10, EMPA 25, and LINA. And you can see that the combination put together is much better than the individual components. Next slide, please. If you see the risk of genitourinary tract infections, which is usually higher with SGLT2 inhibitors, when you add linagliptin, there is a reduction in this too. The probable mode of mechanism is the inhibition of the DPP4 enzyme, which is also present in some bacteria and fungi, and they die, and this leads to less infections. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the CV and renal outcomes with SGLT2 inhibitors, empagliflozin shows consistent reduction in all CV and renal outcomes. If you see the first column on the left, hospitalization for heart failure, CV disc, 3-point MACE, and renal outcomes. Empagliflozin is the only EMPA-REG which, through that study, shows all 4 affected positively. The CANVAS, the declare-TIMI, and the ertugliflozin have a scattered showing in this chart, with remogliflozin, no CV outcome trial. Next slide, please. If you look at the new possibilities thus that can be raised in the management of type 2 diabetes, CV death down by empagliflozin by 38%. Hospitalization for heart failure down by 35%. 3-point MACE 14%. Death by any cause 32%. Nephropathy reduced by 39%. And the renal composite outcome reduced by 46%. This raises the possibilities of better and newer management of type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Now, if you see here, this reduction in CV death was not seen in any other SGLT2 inhibitor CVOT. Next slide, please. But the EMPA-REG outcome, reduced risk of CV death, was observed early and sustained throughout the trial. See the 2 curves diverging. Right from the beginning, they began diverging and kept diverging, with the EMPA at the bottom line in the red and the placebo at the top line in the black, translating into a 38% relative risk reduction. Next slide, please. Similarly, if you look at the CV and renal outcomes with DPP4 inhibitors, linagliptin has ample evidence and is safe across all CV and renal outcomes. If you see renal outcomes for saxagliptin, there is limited evidence. For sitagliptin, again, limited evidence. Linagliptin scores with HHF, CV death, 3-point MACE. Of course, vildagliptin has no CVOT study, and teneligliptin also has no CVOT study. And the comparison of the studies should, of course, be interpreted with caution owing to differences in the study design and methodology and population. But linagliptin has all 4 boxes nicely checked. Next slide, please. Carmelina included the highest proportion of patients with reduced kidney function compared with other CVOTs to date. Carmelina was 62%, Saxa was 15%, allogliptin was 29%, and Sita was 22%. So the proportion of participants with reduced kidney function was maximum with Carmelina. Next slide, please. In Carmelina, linagliptin was associated with a significant reduction in albuminuria progression, as is clearly seen in the graph. Next slide, please. Reduction by 14%. Next slide, please. And final, with ACE inhibitors and ARB scoring 81% reduction. Next slide, please. Metformin addition 55%. So you can see patients with events, time to first occurrence of albuminuria progression. Next slide, please. Therefore, if you look at the ADA-EASD consensus, the decision cycle for patient-centered glycemic management in type 2 diabetes, there is complexity, multiple frequency and mode of administration. One has to thus choose a regimen to optimize adherence and persistence. Facilitating medication adherence should be specifically considered when selecting glucose-lowering medications. And if you have fixed dose formulations that can improve medication adherence when combination therapy is used, they will definitely achieve glycemic targets. So when you are prescribing for a patient, review and agree the management plan, look at the ongoing monitoring and support, look at the implementation of management plan, assess the patient's key characteristics, and if you have a shared decision making to create a management plan, the goals of care will be very nicely achieved. Next slide, please. So both EMPA and LINA are recommended for type 2 diabetes management of patients with CV disease and or at risk of heart failure, respectively. Reduce CV events and mortality class 1 indication with empagliflozin. Empagliflozin recommended to reduce risk of death class 1B. Diabetes treatment to reduce HF risk SGLT2 class 1A. DPP4, CETA and LINA may be considered class 2B. These are the ESC guidelines. Next slide, please. So if you look at the renal evidence, you have EMPA-REG outcome and you have CARMELINA. Put all this together. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You have the hepatic evidence. No dose modification required in hepatic impairment with both EMPA and LINA. And in patients with type 2 diabetes and NAFLD, EMPA significantly reduces liver fat and improves ALT levels. Next slide, please. The cost of diabetes in India is very high. Next slide, please. If you see the diabetes related treatment, 28%. Keep changing the slides, please. Then the treatment of complications and hospitalizations, 22%. Monitoring and screening, 36%. Other costs, 8.7%. And the direct medical costs and the indirect medical costs, when they add up, the cost is extremely high. Next slide, please. If you use a potential impact factor of EMPA, LINA, FDC, the cost of FDC is lower in individuals. EMPA-REG shows that hospitalization for heart failure, CV death, renal dysfunction, all that is reduced because of the pleiotropic benefits being beyond glycemic control, as a result of which you get robust glycemia control. Next slide, please. So the randomized control trial evidence with SGLT2 DPP4 in India, it is approved. And if you compare EMPA, LINA with DAPA-SAXA and Rimovilda, it is the only combination which gets a downward and a green arrow for EMPA-REG outcome and a neutral with CARMELINA, and it has a definite, much better use indication profile as compared to its other colleagues. Of course, direct comparison of studies should be interpreted with caution, but definitely EMPA, LINA outscores the other combinations. Next slide, please. We can see the benefits. Keep changing slides, please. You can get the metabolic benefits, the CV perspective, the renal perspective. So from a glucocentric approach, along with weight loss and reduction in BP, early and rapid achievement of glycemic targets, and a potential to delay disease progression and overcome clinical inertia, and thus reducing cost. Next slide, please. With that, I want to thank you for your kind listening.